the word suggests, leptospirosis. Okay, so when I think about leptospirosis, the thing that comes to my mind is a rat, is a rodent. Okay, and why do I think of that? So let's look at today's. So what is leptospirosis? It is a bacterial zoonotic disease which is caused by spirochetes. So very correctly, somebody said a thin spiral form. Yeah, so spirochetes of the genus Leptospira. And it affects human beings and a wide range of animals, which includes mammals, birds, amphibians, and reptiles. Now, as you can see, it is one of the most common zoonoses that occurs. Okay, so it actually affects human beings and it actually affects animals, and human beings are accidental hosts. Okay, just as we saw in rabies. Now, leptospirosis is also known as Wales disease. It is known as canicola fever because it occurs among canine animals, so canicola fever, and also known as cane field fever. So as I told you, it is considered to be the most widespread disease which is transmissible from animal to humans. And we see a high prevalence of leptospirosis, especially in warm, humid, tropical countries. And cases of leptospirosis are usually seen at healthcare facilities whenever there is an environmental disturbance. So when there is heavy rainflow and because of which there is flooding and water logging, when people walk through such waters, then you will find that cases of leptospirosis occur. So if you look at the number of cases, this is an estimation around 500,000. Now let's contrast this with rabies, where we saw that annually we can see around 59, okay, around 50 to 59,000 cases. So rabies are much lesser, but rabies is the most feared zoonotic disease, while leptospirosis is the most widespread in terms of the numbers being reported. So almost 500,000 cases occur worldwide. Now, there is a strong link which is seen between leptospirosis and extreme weather events. So you can see that when there is one natural disaster that occurs, how there can be an outbreak of other communicable diseases around that disaster. So the case definition of leptospirosis, according to the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, is that it is an acute febrile illness with headache, myalgia, and any one of the following signs. You can get conjunctival suffusion, or the person may present with anuria, that means he does not pass urine, or oliguria, that means decreased amount of urine being passed, jaundice, a yellow discoloration, hemorrhage either from the lungs or from the intestine. So they may either cough up blood or they may pass blood in the stools, and meningeal irritation. So it could be any one of the following signs. And this is accompanied with a history of exposure to infected animals or environment which is contaminated with animal urine. Okay, so that's why I told you when I think about leptospirosis, the first thing that comes to me are rodents, because most often it is this rodent urine which is contaminating the waters, because of which there is a spread of leptospirosis cases. So when we look at the epidemiology in terms of agent, host, and environmental factors, we can see that the agent are spirochetes. So the genus is Leptospira, and the species is, which is pathogenic to human beings, is Leptospira interrogans. Okay, and now I'm sure you will know this better than me about how this Leptospira interrogans looks. Okay, they are thin, light, motile spirochetes, 0.1 to 0.2 micrometers wide and 5 to 15 micrometers long with hooked ends. Now, it's because of these hooked ends, which look like a question mark, that they have been called as interrogans. Okay, so question mark. So these are visible by dark ground illumination and silver staining. Currently, there are a total of 23 serogroups and 200 serotypes. Now, why are we interested in these serogroups and serotypes in epidemiology is because when you carry out serotyping, when you carry out a field investigation, you know where this strain has come from. So they are a very important part of sero, sero survey, sero surveillance, so that you know that the strain, what is common in which area, and you can identify from the source of infection based on the serotyping. Okay, so that is an important part of an epidemic investigation. So this is a silver stain picture which shows you the organisms. These are obligate aerobes, and you can see the question mark, okay, at the two ends. So you have hooked or curved ends, and so the person who saw them felt that they looked like question mark, okay, and so they called it as interrogans. What is the source of infection? So these organisms are excreted in the urine of infected animals for a long period of time. So what happens is animals do not die with this infection, but they are carriers, okay, and they excrete them for as long as they live. So especially for rodents, for their whole lifespan, they excrete these organisms. So mud is usually, so if you find wherever there's water logging, there's muddy area, drains, you will find that in the mud, you can culture these organisms. Okay, so mud which is infected with Leptospira can be a source of infection. The animal reservoir, the most important are Rattus norvegicus and Mus musculus. Okay, so a mouse as well as rat are important reservoirs of leptospirosis. Now, rats have no ill effects from infection, but they remain as carriers. They also infect and they affect wild and domestic animals. So cattle, sheep, goat, buffaloes, pigs, horses, they can be infected to grazing in areas which are contaminated by the urine of affected animals. Now let's look at the host factors. So children are more susceptible because, like we also saw in rabies, children go very close to animals. Okay, so they can acquire this infection from pets, from dogs. Okay, so human infection is an accidental. Okay, so it does not need human beings in order to survive. It normally survives among animals and it is happy with transmission. But when human beings stray into areas where animal urine is contaminating the water or the mud or even water bodies or surfaces, then they can be exposed to the infection. Okay, so the immunity which is produced following an exposure to the infection is a solid serovar specific immunity. Okay, so depending on the type of organism, the serovar, it produces specific immunity for that infection. People who work in fields, okay, so agricultural workers, especially those who work in paddy fields, because in paddy needs water logging, paddy fields need a certain amount of water to be there. So especially in these fields, so field workers, people who work in paddy fields, people who catch animals, especially those who trap rodents, people who work in rice fields, cane fields, people who work with chickens, okay, people who work with fish. So where they cut the fish and they sell the fish, they are exposed. Again, miners, because they work in these dark, damp places under the earth where you can have water seepage and moisture. And a lot of these rodents also live in such places. So they can get exposed. So miners, sewer workers, people who work with cattle, so dairy workers, and vets. Okay, so occupational hazard is very much associated with leptospirosis also. So it can be an occupational hazard. Now, as we've seen by environmental factors, wherever there is contamination, environment which is contaminated with urine and feces, and where these organisms can survive and thrive in those, then you will get cases. Okay, so you find that leptospirosis is present in all the continents across the regions, except in Antarctica because it cannot survive in the cold weather there. They need humidity, so high humidity and warm weather is better for their survival. so it can favor their growth, and they can survive in the soil and water for weeks. Okay, so that is what you need to remember about the environmental factors. Now let's look at the mode of transmission. So typically modes of transmission will be divided as direct transmission and indirect. So this uses both direct transmission as well as indirect. Okay, so direct contact, entry of the organism directly through an abrasion or a cut or through intact mucous membrane. Okay, so the organism can directly enter into the bloodstream. Or you can have indirect contact or broken skin with oil, with soil, water, vegetation which is contaminated with urine of infected animal, or because of droplet infection. So you find that this organism is adapted for transmission in various modes. So to direct, to indirect, as well as through an aerosol. So what is interesting about this droplet infection is when people are milking cows, even when they are milking cows, when they go close, and because when cow sheds and where these goats are there, they also pass urine and they drop their feces there. Okay, so this urine drop, which drops, it can become aerosol, it can become aerosolized. Okay, and air which is contaminated with this urine aerosol, when people breathe it, they can also get infected. So it's interesting to see how organisms have adapted for survival. If you look at the clinical features, the incubation period is fairly straightforward, 5 to 14 days with a range of 2 to 30 days. Okay, so there's nothing much different in this incubation period. It follows the usual norm of around 2 weeks of incubation. Now, the symptoms can vary from a mild flu-like illness to a very serious and fatal disease. Now, often when we hear of cases of leptospirosis, usually during outbreaks, during floods, we fear that the people were admitted and there was death. So again, the fear around leptospirosis is because we see the severe form, severe jaundice, and ending up with death. So often they can be difficult to diagnose because your mild look just like your influenza-like illness. Okay, and it can also resemble other diseases such as dengue, typhoid, and viral hepatitis. This disease is self-limiting and often clinically inapparent in the majority of cases. Now, around 5 to 15% of untreated cases can progress to a more severe and potentially fatal stage. So there are 4 broad clinical categories. You have a mild influenza-like illness. You can have Wales syndrome characterized by jaundice, renal failure, hemorrhage, myocarditis with arrhythmias. You can have one form in which you have central nervous CNS symptoms. So you can get meningitis or meningoencephalitis, or you can have a form in which you get more of the respiratory symptoms, and in which it can progress to pulmonary hemorrhage and respiratory failure. So you get 4 broad clinical categories, and you can see why the confusion can occur. When it is mild influenza-like illness, there is no other way unless you do a test and to see whether this is leptospirosis. If there is jaundice, it can look like viral hepatitis. If there is meningitis, you can think of meningococcal meningitis. And when you have pulmonary symptoms, this could be so much like your severe acute respiratory illnesses. Okay, so because it has such a varied presentation, diagnosis can be a little difficult. So usually what happens is, if there is a history of having walked through flooded waters, or having walked through a body, or having swum sometimes people go out into the jungles and they swim in these lakes and rivers, and many of these people can end up with leptospirosis. So a history, if you can pick up, or if there is an occupation that can give you into a clue before you do your tests for leptospirosis. So on an average, around 2 weeks incubation period. Now, the person may present with fever, myalgia, conjunctival suffusion, headache, or renal manifestations in the milder form. So what is a conjunctival suffusion? Okay, so this is a patient with leptospirosis, and you can see in the eye here, you can see that it is yellow. If you look at the corner of the eye, you can see that there is a yellow discoloration, and you can look, so that means he has jaundice also, and look at the amount of blood that you can see in the eye. Okay, so that is conjunctival suffusion. Okay, so this is how it looks. There is so much of blood which has leaked from the capillaries. Okay, so it's not just a streak, but the whole eye is looking red. So this is suffusion, and this is quite typical of leptospirosis. Pulmonary manifestation, they can come with straight away with cough, chest pain, or hemoptysis. And so you can understand all the differential diagnosis that will be running in the doctor's mind. Most severe form of leptospirosis is called as the icteric leptospirosis. So the symptoms are the same, but they are more severe, and you can also have organ involvement. And as you can see, look at the dark yellow discoloration that you can see. So where do you look for jaundice? Let's look at. Did you all get an opportunity to start clinical postings? No, you are the ones who are just a fourth semester now, who's been promoted to fifth semester, right? So you've not been to the wards. Do you go to the wards during ICM? Patient contact, apart from theory, have you all learned how to examine patients? Any ward experience? I need to hear some answers. No. All right. Okay, so where will you look for jaundice? What is a good area to look for jaundice in? Yellow discoloration. Yes, bulbar conjunctiva. Very good. Yes, upper bulbar conjunctiva. Where else? Because even clinically, you can see how severe the jaundice by looking at where you are able to see the yellowness. Okay, so eyes, you can see it almost immediately. Okay, you must also look at palms. Yes. Okay, so you look in the palms, and if you can even look, you can see, look at the soles. Okay, so if it's reached the soles, that is definitely severe. Okay, so you can even know what is the level of the bilirubin by looking at the extent. For babies, for little babies, we even look at the back because their skin is very thin. So you look at the palms, you look at soles, you look at the back. Okay, so that is a little bit of the clinical part for you. Okay. So icteric leptospirosis, pretty much the same, more severe form, but you will also can get organ involvement, and very typically you get jaundice. So when will you suspect a case of leptospirosis? If the cases show, if there's fever with chills, if there's muscle pain, myalgia, you get it in the calf, abdomen, lower back. If there's intense headache, frontal or retroorbital. Okay, now you will find that this intense headache, frontal or retroorbital, you will also get in a patient who has dengue. Okay, dengue fever also typically uh, around 40 degrees centigrade, around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, high grade fever, and intense headache. Persons who have typhoid also have complaint of intense headache. Okay, but in dengue, this typical retroorbital pain, which you will also see. So if they have intense headache, frontal or retroorbital headache, fever with chills, if there's severe myalgia, and if any one of the following features. So if they have conjunctival suffusion, if the urine output is affected, it's either reduced or there's absent, there's severe chest